It seemed like for years that the backup quarterback has always been the most popular guy on campus, or even if you're a fan of a pro team, the backup quarterback always had this odd fascination surrounding him, right? Whether you want to talk about, TJ Lateef versus Dylan Raiola, or, there are people talking about Joe Montana versus Steve Young, or, Drew Bledsoe versus well, that's not a good example. That one worked out. But it's always been a thing. I remember people talking about Breon Carnes when Taylor Martinez was here at Nebraska. It's always a thing. But for Nebraska fans, I have to say, I do think we come by it mostly honestly. And that's because of a guy named Brook Berringer. And I want to tell a little bit of a story here for people that either weren't around when Brook was here or don't remember his story at Nebraska. Brook Berringer was the backup quarterback for the 1994 and 1995 National Championship Nebraska Cornhuskers. He backed up Tommy Frazier, who was second place in the Heisman in 1995. Great quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in college football history. I feel strongly that that is accurate. And Brook Berringer was his backup. He ended up playing most of the 1994 season because Tommy Frazier was dealing with blood clots. So Nebraska fans had a lot of time to get to know Brook as he struggled through his own injuries, had a punctured lung and finished a game, and was still able to bring Nebraska to victory, and even got to play quite a bit against Miami in that national championship game as well, giving Nebraska a spark as Tommy Frazier was knocking off the rust a little bit there. But the thing that people remember about Brook Berringer isn't necessarily his play on the field. It's about who he was as a person and the way that he represented the state of Nebraska, even though technically he was from Kansas. Not technically, he just was from Kansas, but he felt like one of us. He felt like one of our own because of the way he carried himself and the way that he went about his business. And part of that starts with the way he went about his business as a senior in 1995. After he had started most of the 94 season because of the injury to Tommy Frazier, he battled it out with Tommy Frazier for the starting job, and he lost. He didn't win that job. He stuck around. He was part of the team. He was the consummate teammate, and when Nebraska called, he answered, which was mostly in mop-up duty. Thankfully for him, there was a lot of mop-up duty that year, so he still got to play a decent amount. But in today's day and age, it's really hard to find a guy that would have stuck around. I know the transfer portal rules were different and everything, but people still transferred back then, different opportunities. He could have gone back home to Kansas. He definitely would have started for Kansas or Kansas State back in the mid-90s. And there was still talk, even as a backup, that he was going to get a shot in the NFL because of his ability to run and throw the football. He was probably a better professional prospect than Tommy Frazier was because of that ability. He looked like a prototype quarterback that could also run the triple option. And Brook Berringer, for people that don't know, passed away about a week before the draft in 1996. He had gotten his pilot's license, and he was flying a little plane with a friend, and something malfunctioned, and they ended up crashing the plane, and they all passed away. And the impact that Brook had, both in life and in death, is something that I just want to remind people of, because he had a direct impact on my life as well. When I was 7 years old, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and I had a really hard time with it. When you're young, people don't really understand, your classmates, your friends, your peers don't really understand what's happening. You know, the organizations that help out with kids that are diagnosed with type 1, they send people out to your school and they try and explain that, hey, Ravi may have to do things that are a little bit different. But a lot of times all young kids hear is, oh, Ravi's sick, and they think, I don't want to be around him anymore. And that was hard. When you're a young kid, that's hard. One of my favorite parts of the school day is for that whole first year that I was diagnosed, my mom would come up and eat lunch with me to make sure that I had the right amount of food, to make sure I gave myself the right amount of insulin, and so I wouldn't be alone. It was really hard and isolating and lonely as a 7-year-old. And then that summer, my mom did something that I hated, and she sent me to what's called a diabetes camp. Doesn't sound like a real thing, but it is. It's basically just like a regular camp, but everybody there is a type 1 diabetic, and they have doctors and nurses and counselors there to help make sure everybody stays healthy, but they try and give you sort of a normal camp experience with the safety of medical supervision. And I hated it, I'll be honest with you. I didn't want to be there. I still was having a hard time fitting in, even around other diabetic kids. I was still pretty newly diagnosed and didn't know what any of it meant. And then one day, this tall, dark-haired, good-looking guy starts walking up over this hill. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. He was there with a Nebraska basketball player too, and I have no idea who that was. But I knew who Brook Berringer was. It was after that '94 season, and he had on this big, shiny national championship ring. And he talked to us. And he spent time, and he went around to all the different kids, threw us a few passes. And then he saw me as he was about to leave, sitting alone at a picnic table. And he came and he sat down, and he kind of asked me what my name was and you know, what my story was and where I was from and things like that. And I remember it like it was yesterday because I was wearing, ironically enough, a Miami Hurricane shirt that day. My grandma had bought it for me because she knew I liked sports. And so she bought me whatever sports stuff she could find. And I'm sure that looked very odd to Brook Berringer sitting in Nebraska with a 7-year-old kid with a Miami Hurricane shirt on. But he sat there for what felt like a long time. It was probably 5 or 10 minutes. Felt like he sat there with me for an eternity. But when he got up and when he left that day, my life had changed. I didn't feel like the weird, lonely, isolated kid that was sick and nobody wanted to be around. I felt like Brook Berringer was my best friend. I mean, if Brook Berringer is my best friend, then I'm gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be fine. And I took that with me. I took that with me for years. I think there's a part of me that still holds on to that, well, Brook Berringer wants to be my friend. What could possibly be wrong with me or my life? And it changed my life dramatically and for the better. I had confidence that I had never had before. I had no problem making friends after that. Maybe it was the confidence, maybe it was people saw the picture I took around all the time of me and Brook Berringer. I have no idea. But my life was different after that. And I give Brook Berringer a lot of credit for it. And so the point of the story isn't really about backup quarterbacks or me or anything else. It's about why football and sports in general, especially here in Nebraska, are so important. Yeah, like we get mad when Dylan Raiola takes 9 sacks or the offensive line doesn't perform or Nebraska loses a football game, and that it's all frustrating. I get mad too. But what we don't remember all the time in the midst of these things, in the midst of the struggles, you know, in the midst of the last 15 years that haven't been what Nebraska football should be, we forget that, you know, Brook Berringer went to countless hospitals and camps and churches and all these other places and connected with kids and adults and everyone in this state in a way that changed people's lives for the better. And none of that happens without football, without the University of Nebraska, without sports. That's why sports is important. We saw last week Coach Stanley from Elkhorn North go through one of the worst things anyone can ever go through, the loss of a child. And he came out and coached, and Elkhorn North won the game on a last-second walk-off touchdown. And you sit there and you go, does any of this matter in the face of what he's facing right now? Absolutely not. But at the same time, it absolutely does. That might be the only time Coach Stanley has felt a little bit of joy in God knows how long. That's what sports is capable of. It's capable of connecting us. It's capable of bringing us moments of peace and joy when nothing else can. And maybe it's just for a moment, but those moments can sustain us. That moment I had with Brook Berringer 31 years ago at this point sustained me for my entire childhood. That moment for Coach Stanley and his family, it might sustain them for as long as they need to as they work through this horrible time in their lives. There's not a lot of things that provide that in this life. That's why sports matter. That's why we care. And that's why we tell the stories that we do.